Hey, what's good, everyone? We're back. Welcome to another episode of CarWash Conversations. Once again, I'm your guy, Mr. Anderson, better known as Ron Tank. I got my boy BG, Mr. Reese, and my fellow Dub on the call with us. And we're just here to give you 10 rules of a black man to follow in America. If we go back to the first episode, we discussed things like being an individual, being honest with yourself and others, being able to seek mental health, and being able to defend yourself. And since we're talking about defending yourself, I figured that we start off with a point in which we kind of left off kind of abruptly. One of the questions was, what are you willing to sacrifice as it relates to being able to defend yourself? So I'll open up the floor for discussion, and we'll shoot from there.
Well, I think it was something that Dub was saying. I think we were talking about the situation where the young man was pinned up against the tree. It was an attempted lynching, and just to kind of to rehash that a little bit, on July 4th, there was a young guy. I forget what his name was, but I read the story and saw the video. He and some friends were out at a lake in Bloomington, Indiana, for the July 4th weekend, and he got into an argument with a group of white guys. It got physical, and when the video starts, when the video that I saw, when the video starts, you see a black dude kind of bent over, like trying to, use his weight to his advantage. And a group of, white guys like that got him pinned to a tree, like they're trying to pin him there to get him to stay. And then one of them just hollers out, "Hey, go get a noose." Right. And we were rehashing, that situation as it relates to firearms or, violence or, what we would do in that particular situation. So I think that was a question that Dub had of what are we willing to sacrifice in that particular moment. You correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's just about accurate. And I think I was kind of alluding to the fact that, you know, based off the support you have around you, uh, it just you just have to protect your homeboys just based off of who they are, and who been right, whatever. But what are you willing to sacrifice? For me personally, um, I think I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit more than you guys are, just simply because you have other people, little people, nieces and nephews, to consider before you make rash decisions. And that's very credible, depending on what your decision is and whatever situation. But for me
Okay.
personally, if either one of you guys were in that situation, it's ride or die.
I mean, all right, here's my question. What are the choices here, right? I mean, I don't know if you were talking about like either the choice is to pull out your pistol or stand there and watch him get strung up. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, what are the options? I mean, I don't think we should spend like a ton of time on it, but I mean, one of us is pinned to a tree. I mean, and they're talking about going and getting a rope. I
Well,
mean, you're not. What are the alternatives other than to get involved?
well,
I
I'll
don't
say
see.
this.
I don't see that
But
there are any
but he
involved.
didn't he have it was him and four other guys, correct?
I don't know
Yeah,
how many other people it was with him, but
Uh,
he wasn't by himself. I mean,
he
regardless of
wasn't.
how many people it was, what are the alternatives? But
I'll say
to
this.
get involved.
Yeah, you have to get involved. My thinking of that is um, kind of how the way I operate is in the moment. Um, I'm gonna react accordingly, whatever that situation calls for. But there's also things to think about after the fact. So let's just say hypothetically, somebody's tied to a tree. One of you guys, instinct is going to tell me to react a certain way. And more than likely in that particular case, because I think it was a black guy and I think maybe three other white guys, four maybe if I'm not mistaken, and they were able to talk it through with the people who were attempting to do it because they were recording and they were having a dialogue back and forth. They were having a discourse, and that seemed to kind of diffuse the situation. My first reaction is to not take out a phone. My first reaction is,
And I think we all agreed on that. None of
yeah,
us, short of Ron, maybe. But BG said that he wouldn't. That wouldn't be his first reaction. That definitely
yeah,
wouldn't be.
I'm not pulling out a phone. If I have my firearm on me, that's probably going to be my second option. I'm probably going to fight the first time, but
And put
if there's time I get in the rope.
and put it like this. I mean, when I say get involved, I'm not saying, pull out a gun and spray everybody. I mean, I'm talking
Nah,
about like something has to be done. I'm not acting like I'm Superman because I'm not. That's,
I have a thing
I'm
about,
not, but I mean, something has to be done. You know what I'm saying?
don't
Like
put your
there's no choice but to get involved with that.
don't put your hands on myself and don't put your hands on my people. Now, if we're having an argument and you're up against a tree and they're surrounding you, I can wiggle myself in between whoever. But when they have you pinned down, you've crossed the threshold that I'm not comfortable with, because I don't know what they're capable. I don't know what your intentions are. We can agree to disagree. We can yell, call each other names, um, point fingers, and do all that stuff. But when you start physically putting your hands on people around myself and who I love, um, I'm going to react with the same energy that you started it with. So if we're cursing and screaming at each other, I'll curse and scream. If you're putting your hands on people, I'm more than likely going to put my hands on the opposite energy. I've
Yeah.
said it.
OG.
Yeah. I think it's definitely what B was talking about. I think it's a combination of both, to be completely honest. I agree with Dub that says, like, whatever energy you come at me with, the same energy I'm going to walk into you, that same light with. I definitely think it's an opportunity at all costs to just be involved. You can't allow something to happen to someone you consider that close to you and not say something. That's how friendships and brotherhoods and so forth, so on, are damaged. It's one of those things that I hope to be able to extend to my kiddo when he gets to that point. Actually, both of them, the value of true friendship and what that looks like. It's not always about putting yourself in harm's way just to benefit your friend, but when the cause is right and when the time is right, doing what's necessary so that everybody can walk away from the situation unscathed. If you got to get into a fist fight, so forth, so on, that's just what it is. Like I said the last time, the benefit of cell phones, somebody's going to be close by recording it. We hope that the truth is being recorded on that cell phone as opposed to a one-sided detail. But at the end of the day, if it's somebody that is near and dear to you and they find themselves in unfavorable circumstances in your presence, I think it's almost a bit cowardly if you don't intervene and do something. Let me ask you this question. And I know we said we're going to give a certain amount of time to go with this, but let's take the George Floyd, since it's been the most present situation. And we're going to stick with this same question. What are you willing to sacrifice? What does it take to be a person who says, you know what, this cell phone ain't it? I got to go step in and intervene, even though these cops have guns and have weapons on them. What is it going to take for a citizen to say, hey, this ain't right, point blank, period, and this man could still be alive if it could have been for someone to say, you know what, I got to step in regardless of what my life may end up being, what my record, my charge against me may be, so forth, so on. How do we get to that point, do you believe?
Oh no, that's somebody who wants to, that's somebody who wants to put their life on the line, because intervening with a police matter, which is what that was at that particular time, where they're trying to arrest somebody and you taking it upon yourself to try to stop that, you're putting your life on the line. I don't know of anybody who would be willing to do that. Like you're intervening on a police matter. You know what
Understood.
I'm saying? Like
understood.
You would probably get shot.
Understood, but we're talking about injustice being done in the same vein.
I mean, who's ready to die?
Yeah,
Again,
that's what it come down to. That's what it come down. It not okay. So if you're not willing to die, let's just assume that they don't shoot you. You will be charged with assault on the police or assault on a peace officer. Um, what is it? I forget the technical name of it, but just intervening with police matters. I think there's a specific name for it. It eludes me right now.
Get shot.
Guy that
That's
you
what it's
don't
called.
know. What's that?
It's called get shot.
well,
Get shot, get arrested. And the guy who actually they interviewed him, he was in tears because he said the people that know me normally know that I get involved with these type of things. I don't think they could have played it any better. I mean, it's easy to tell people what to do when you're not in the situation, when you're not in the moment, when you don't feel the emotions, when you're not in the environment, and say this is what I would have done. And there's some people who would have. I don't doubt it, but for the normal citizen, normal law-abiding everyday person, they're not jumping out to go tackle a cop because one, they're already killing him. So if they're killing him with a knee on the neck, and you go tackle somebody, what do you think they're going to do to you?
I hear you. My only thing is if we're talking about what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you able to, even potentially in death, be able to say, because if we go back to the civil rights leaders of the past, let's make sure we understand they all died fighting for a cause, right? If you see injustice being done, are you willing, and not necessarily us per se, but I mean, George Floyd could be alive. And yeah, I understand that the person who steps in and intervenes and find themselves in the middle of a police matter could find several charges brought against them, could also find themselves being shot and killed. But in that same breath, you have the opportunity to save a life and you have video evidence of injustice being done and literally someone trying to step in essence, police to police.
Well, let me
And
kind of put
I
some.
can't tell you that I would do that. I can't
the
sit
way
here and
I
lie and say
the
that I
way
would
the way
step
I
in
look at
that
it,
particular moment.
the way I look at it is, if you step in, it could potentially be two people.
Well,
You
when
know,
you said that you have people who have risked their lives, did they do it knowingly? I think that they understood the risk, but I don't think that Martin Luther King went out protesting and putting themselves in situations thinking that he was going to die. I think that
No,
he
no, no, no,
understood.
no. We talking about the George Floyd situation. They are arresting him. You see a bunch of cops arresting this guy. One has his knee on his neck with his arms handcuffed behind him. Right? That
Right.
was their way of, well, they killed him, but that was their way of arresting him. Are
Well,
you
not
willing
only
to
not only
insert
cut you off,
yourself into that matter in order to save
I think
his life? That's what the
I
question
think
I don't
is.
want to cut you
I
off, but
think
let
you
me
have
make
to
sure
put.
we add to that. Hold on, Dub. Let's make sure we add to that. You not only have a
I
guy,
can't say I would.
right, you not only have a police officer with his knee on his neck, but you also have a police officer with his knee on his chest cavity, and you also have somebody with knee on his legs as well. The dude wasn't going anywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
He's
actually,
not going anywhere.
it was four. It was the
All the
three that was
same.
on his body, and then the one in front of
it doesn't
in front.
matter.
Sure.
3, 4, too many people on.
Sure.
I will say this for myself. I don't. I say as much as I know about myself, I don't think I would have reacted in that manner. But at the same token, I don't necessarily know what people will do in those particular situations until you find yourself in that situation.
Sure.
I'm gonna say, for the most part, maybe no for most people.
How about you, OG?
Man, I mean, it's exactly as Dub just said, man. You don't know what you would do until you find yourself in that moment. If it's egregious and it's evident that there is injustice being done, I don't know. I don't know what the price is anymore for fighting for our rights or whatnot. I know that something has to be done to begin shifting this mindset that police aren't able to be policed. And this whole thing of quote unquote a citizen's arrest or being able to tell someone that you are doing wrong, it has to be kind of talked about. I think that in any profession, you have checks and balances, right?
Oh no, people say stuff to them all the time while they're doing this stuff.
Sure.
People say that. I mean, what we were talking about is physically intervening, like trying to, prevent his death. And like you say, that's, I can't say that I'm brave enough to do that. I can't say that.
Well, there's a video in Houston. I want to say in Houston, where a police officer was arresting a young man, and there were people with cell phones videotaping it. And the cop even said, "Hey, y'all want to
help me out? Yeah,
help me subdue him." Yeah. And the guy who was talking to him was like, "Hey, bro, calm down. We're videotaping. We're just trying to make sure that you can survive this encounter." That's a physical interaction. They literally came up, approached the officer. Well, even before the officer even asked, they were already there. Correct. They were in a close enough proximity for the officer to say, "Hey, man, if y'all want to help me get his hands behind his back so I don't have to do X, Y, and Z." That's a physical interaction. Now, nobody touched him. Well, actually, no. After they were invited by the police, the guy came over, put his hands on the guy, said, "Hey, bro, just relax. He's gonna put your arm around your back so they can handcuff you. And we just want to make sure that you survive this interaction." That's a physical interaction without having nobody died, nobody got shot, nobody got hurt for the most part. And it started with cell phone footage. Now, with George Floyd's case, I think you just had a bunch of inexperienced cop, one rogue cop.
No, they were very much so experienced.
There was only one rookie.
Yeah, only one rookie. Very much so experienced.
Well, we'll say inexperienced in civil discourse. With people.
No, as a matter of fact, you call it inexperienced. You had two of them who had several citations against them as it related to some form of police brutality.
Well, when I mean inexperienced, I'm talking about inexperienced with having to de-escalate situations. Not saying that they don't have any experience as being cops, but
they don't have the skills.
With skills to de-escalate without true force, brutal force.
There you go. They don't have that experience.
Which is a bit of culture in that area of the world or the country.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Just based off of what people have been saying. But, I mean, like I said, man, look, Dub, you had it spot on. I don't know what I would do in that moment. I've actually replayed that scenario in my head. What would I do if I was there? I've been a hero and I've been someone who's not. But when it actually comes down to it, dog, there's nothing stopping them from pulling a gun and shooting. You may not touch anybody. There was four guys there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing we can do. I mean, it would be one. Unfortunately, this sounds bad, but it's one mortar versus two.
Hey, it's all good. It definitely just goes into the conversation of how we have to be able to defend ourselves in more ways than one, but even then be strategic about the situations we find ourselves into in the same vein. All right, so that wraps up that final four. We're going to get right into that next one, which will be to educate yourself, to read, and to research. I think that anybody who knows me knows I'm big on putting yourself in a position where people cannot hinder you in any form of fashion. And that, for me, definitely comes from the stance of reading and doing all that you can to educate yourself to the highest power. What say you fellas?
Well, I'm definitely down, man. As a fellow educator, there's nothing more powerful than having knowledge. And the old adage says, if you want to hide something, put it in the book. But we know the answer to that, so we just need to start doing it. I mean, reading is very important. Learning and figuring out the ways of the world. History is very important. All those things play a factor in just, learning, getting educated. But you got to have a thirst for it. Like, you got to want to know what's beyond what someone has told you. Like, you got to go figure it out. You got to go research it for yourself. Prove it to yourself. Don't always just rely, which, in a lot of cases is good to have that, person telling you how it is and how it should be, but go and figure out, how things work for yourself. You know what I mean? What you think, babe?
I think when I hear the term education, I'm thinking, a lot more broad. I mean, of course, school is great. Education from a school. I mean, I think it's essential, but just as essential as book knowledge, I think people need to educate themselves. On how to take care of themselves. We need to learn how to do things that are not taught in school. In school, they don't teach you about credit. In school, they don't teach you about taxes. In school, they don't teach you about things on how to handle money, on how to invest, on how to start up a business. Like, these are things that aren't taught in schools, right? They have knowledge that can get you, like I look at a degree, high school diploma, college diploma, master's, all of that. I look at those as tools in a toolbox, right? And the education that you get from those institutions help you get those tools that are in that toolbox. But for people who aren't going to go in that direction, educating yourself means to educate yourself about money, educate yourself about credit, educate yourself about how to do what it is that you want to do. It's not just books. It's about, just being better all around. That's what I mean. That's what I think about when I think about educating yourself.
I kind of have something of a similar view, but different. I think, and this is my opinion, and as educators, y'all tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think most people educate themselves on the basis of whatever benefit they can get from their education. So, and what I mean is, so let's say I'm a high school junior, and I have dreams of making it to the NFL. I'm probably going to be a little less inclined to study history as opposed to studying film, as opposed to studying my favorite wide receiver, team schemes, coaches, schools like that. And I think what I see with most young people is because education is so broad that they only hone in on whatever it is that they think can benefit them on their mindset at the time. I think education is important, but your maturity level will let you know what you need to be educated about to serve you to whatever your goal is. So if I'm a plumber, I'm probably not going to major in world history or something like that. Now, as education as a whole, I might have to take it, but my interest is here. So I'm only going to educate myself what I'm interested in, and my thirst is going to come from what my interest is. And I think the interest comes from whatever benefit I see on the other end. If you're a teacher who spent 8 years, or I'll say a doctor or lawyer who has to spend 8 years in a residency or 4 or 5 years doing X, Y, and Z, and they say, all right, well, at the end of your residency, you can only start out making $70,000, but you got a $40,000 loan to pay back. I don't think it's as appealing as to someone who says, I want to be a music producer and I can, I have to go to school and graduate, but I want to get more educated about the business of music because I see the benefit with what I see in front of me. So I think most kids, younger kids, from my personal experience is, yeah, I'll learn what I'm interested in because I can see the benefit of what I'm interested in on the other side. I think if you take away the benefit from it, if you were to say, well, you can get your degree and it's not going to serve you well as far as a job, you're not going to make as much money. I think that is going to deter most young people from being educated because what's the benefit?
OG?
I think, I mean, there's so many points to kind of take on in and of that self, right?
I want you to have enough time on this point.
I know, right? I'll come from a general perspective, and it kind of goes back to what Reese was talking about. And I'm gonna try to spin all of it together. But I think it's just important as a black man to be knowledgeable about certain things, right? And so, as a leader of your household, potentially of your family, your overall family, you're expected to be able to do certain things for your families, right? And I think that we are in a position to lead those who are coming up and position them in ways that they don't have to go through the same things that we went through, because we can give them certain knowledge, whether it be about the political system, the justice system, education as a whole, so whatever the case may be. So I think in the general sense of educating yourself, we as black men have to take every opportunity to read whatever we can, discern from what we're reading, create meaning of that, and be able to pass it down so that the lives of people who are following us can be a little bit easier than ours was. As it relates to the field of education, I do agree, B, that we do not do a good enough job of getting students and kids prepared for life. Unfortunately, many states, Texas being number one, in my opinion, you get tied to a test and that becomes the general factor for how you educate kids. And it is a huge disservice. I'll be the very first to admit that. And it will be more beneficial to give kids life skills that will allow them to become more productive members of society. Dub, as you spoke to, you're kind of spot on that kids really pick up on things as they see a benefit to them. My only rebuttal to that would be that as an athlete, you have to understand the term that comes before it, right? And that term is student. You have to be a student athlete. For a kid who doesn't have the most basic survival needs met, you know what I'm saying? Educating, reading, literature, math, all those things aren't important because those survival needs haven't been met. And so you have to approach that kid in a different fashion or whatnot. And so that's why you hear this mantra in education of meeting the kid where they are, not approaching kids in a one-size-fits-all fashion, because everybody is different. And what is going to take to move the needle is going to be different for each kid. But I do believe there are benefits, because I think that we can all draw back on some form of education that we've received, regardless if we're working in the field or not. An impactful teacher is an impactful teacher, and it may have been a life lesson she gave you, but you can also go, he or she, I should say, you can also go back and pull up some type of lesson that they've given you in the same vein that was straight content mastery. So I think it's a little bit of everything. Ultimately, it comes down to us just picking up books. We have to show our young black boys how to read books. It is a troubling statistic in the field of education to see the number of black boys who don't read books, who come from the excuse of, I don't like to read, all I want to do this, all I want to do that. That sounds good, that sounds fine, but the reality is we're putting out kids who don't know how to read, then they're having kids who don't know how to read. And when you have a literacy issue the way Texas does and the United States, that's a problem we have to pay attention to, because it grows much deeper. Because one day you're going to sign a contract, and you need to know how to read that contract, whether it be to buy a car, to lease an apartment, to buy a home, whatever the case may be. It's bigger than just literature. The literature is one part to bring about a certain understanding. The overall factor is being able to read and pick up what you're reading.
So speak to that real quick. Like, some people may not even know that there is a literacy, a quote unquote, a literacy issue. So speak to that. Do you have any kind of stats or
for sure,
anything like that?
Oh, for sure. I go back and I have to go back and look at the most recent, but I'll give you an example of when I first started teaching. I used to show my students this documentary called Stupid in America. And it was a documentary done by CNN. You can find it on YouTube. And it speaks to the literacy and math issues that exist in the United States. Texas was 47 out of 50 states in 2011, between 2011 and 2013 or whatnot. And the United States was 17 out of 19 countries. That speaks to a huge problem. We are, in the field of education, in charge of growing the next doctors, the next presidents, the next ball players, the next whatever the case may be. We're in charge of breeding all those kids, right? The most basic skill that you could ever have is being able to read. Not only being able to read, but create inferences based off what you're reading, create deeper meaning based off what you're reading. It does no good to find yourself in an intellectual conversation with someone who is going to big word you to death and you can't pick up what they put down. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to talk all about you, and then you find yourself embarrassed and ashamed because you didn't take advantage of the things that were before you in grade school. Now, there are students with a myriad of struggles and necessities and so forth, so on. But it really starts, and this is just my true and honest opinion, it starts at home. I think as parents, you have to pick up a book for your child in their early
Fathers,
phases
read to
of
your
life.
kids.
You know what I'm saying? Read to your child. Put that inside of them that they're going to be who they are because you're breeding that kid, if you will. The word breeding sounds bad, but that's just the reality of what it is. To me, when you do that, you give your child a better chance of success because you get those brain stems already flowing, right? Now, there is a huge thing that goes from first to second to third, and then when you finally get that chance to test in third grade, the pressure comes and so forth, so on. I don't care anything about a test. I really, really don't. I care about your fundamental ability to be able to read. I give you this, for example. I got a buddy of mine. I worked with him, and he used to be a coach at Langston University in Oklahoma, right? And as funny as it is, it's also sad because going back to Doug's point, all they want to do is, rap a lyric or dribble a ball, right? So they're recruiting this young man, and he's a heck of a talent. He all-star stud safety, can dissect the defense, so forth, so on. But the dude could not pronounce the word the or the, however you want to say it. You know what I'm saying? It's the basic level that comes down to reading simple sentences and being able to discern what's being given to you in certain lights. We can't always rely on an agent. We can't rely on people who we say, oh, this is somebody close to me. I'm going to use them so that they can tell me what this says and so forth, so on. No, bro. Do it yourself. Educate yourself. If you plan to make it to the league, cool. I want you to make it there. But I want you, in doing so and in getting there, I want you to be able to do a lot of these things for yourself. That involves reading the fine print that many of us ignore.
It's crazy. And, I hear what you're saying. And I just think some people's apathy, when you're talking about like every teacher that I know, their number one concern and really complaint are about the parents. You know what I'm saying? And I know that everything starts at home. I just think that, and not to make an excuse for it, I think that, part of the apathy and, kind of the decline of the education system and people's, either involvement in it or caring about it is we have such a flawed education system, and it's not the fault of the teachers or anybody on the ground level. I think it's the fault of the parents and also the government, the way that they run it. They don't pay teachers. You can't agree on the testing. And, we've had this, school versus no school debate before, right? I mean, we don't have to rehash it, but, it's like the way that the school system is run is made for worker bees. It's made for you to be a worker bee. You know what I'm saying? You go to school, you get a diploma, you go to college, and you go and do what?
Work.
You get a job, right? And like I say, I mean, we've been over it. Like, if you don't have a full scholarship, what do? You take out a loan, all right? And then you need somewhere to stay, you take out a loan. You need something to drive, you take out a loan. You know what I'm saying? Like, it starts you out in debt, and it starts you on that rat race. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we have such a you start off life at 22 years old, $100 and something thousand in debt, and now you gotta go get a job. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have a flawed education system, and I think that's why you have now, like you say, sometimes you got kids that you got to convince them to even come to school. I've heard you say that a couple of times.
You do, and I'm not speaking about college. I'm not speaking anything anything at the secondary, post-secondary level. I'm talking about straight public schooling. You know what I'm saying?
No, I was just bringing that up.
Yeah, I got you. I'm just saying, and I don't want to seem as if I'm saying that it's the parents' fault or anything else. School is about a community, right? And you go back to when we were in school, it was a village, and I saw a post on Facebook. It was Tony, you know what I'm saying, that posted it, and it was just kind of like, yo, until we really take time to invest, put our things to the side, invest in our children, because I think a lot of the disconnect comes from parents wanting to live their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have a child, that child comes first. That's just my opinion. Don't care who comes for me, whatever the case may be. As it relates to having a school-age child, I think that it's one of those things in which you have to work hand in hand with that teacher. I haven't met a teacher yet. Well, I take that back. I do know some. I'm not saying all teachers are perfect, but the majority of teachers will work with you hand over foot to make sure that your kid is in an environment that is protecting them and that is showing them that they can have growth too. But we can't do it for you. It has to be a hand-in-hand type of relationship. You know what I'm saying? And so the whole worker bee analogy, as we discussed before, you're absolutely right. A lot of that has happened and does continue to happen today. I'm simply talking about getting through 12th grade, because guess what? We do need that piece of paper that as you exit high school. You know what I'm saying? You have to have that. Some people get lucky enough to say, hey, I'm going to jump out of high school and I'm going to go follow my dream and I'm going to go play ball somewhere, or I'm going to go make music and so forth and so on. That percentage is super low.
Small.
You know what I'm saying? For the rest of us, whether we decide to go to college or not, we need that high school diploma. And I personally do not want you to exit at the elementary level and you're struggling and no one's helping you out if you never said anything and your parents not willing to come up there and say, hey, how can we help my child? You know what I'm saying? But it works together. You got to work together.
Can I ask y'all something about educators? What resources, because you brought up a very good point about, for the most part, well, some of the teachers that will help those parents who may not necessarily have the resources or their own education to help their own kids out. Let's just assume that I am a single father of 3. I have to work. I don't have enough time not even enough time. I don't have the education to help my 5th, 6th, or 7th grader out with their homeworks. What resources do I have in a public school setting to say,
Man.
No, go ahead. I want to speak to that.
Okay, so I'm going to get to that, but I just want to say this, though. Teaching is not a job. It's not a profession. It is a responsibility. Teaching comes from everyone you come in contact with. Whether they teach you something that can help you in life, or they teach you by example what not to do or what to do. Teaching is a responsibility for everyone. And like Ron said, it takes a village. Now, whether you have aspiration to go off to college, wonderful. If that's your dream and you want to do that, cool. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a teacher, you want to be the president of the United States, go for it. But if you want to be a plumber, do that. Get a trade. Whatever you do, you have to flip your passion. Like if you into athletics, I think you talked about the athlete. Get into whatever dealing with athletics. Be a trainer, be a coach. Whatever you want to do, get into that lane. But to speak to the resources, man, literally, whether you are an educated parent or an ignorant parent, all you have to do is call the school and ask. Because you got to be smart enough to at least ask the simple question, I need help. I don't understand how to help my kids. I don't understand how to help them with their homework. What's available for them to get extra help? And anybody in whatever particular school district, whatever particular school, they should redirect you to whatever there is available. There's after school programs, there's reading programs in every school. You just have to ask. Now, thing is, I don't know how to explain it. To me, because to me it's just simple. I mean, if you don't ask for help, how do we know you need help?
Well, let me
And
expound.
then go ahead.
I think that it's something because I'm trying to teach my kiddo how to open his mouth and ask for help myself. You know what I'm saying? That's a skill in and of itself.
Facts.
I do appreciate him saying that teaching is a responsibility. And Dub, as I alluded to earlier, we know that teachers aren't perfect, and we have people in the field who don't need to be there, or who need to go on somewhere else, right? But the fact of the matter is this: that teachers go out of their way to assist kids on a regular basis. You know what I'm saying? If you're a kid there are so many stories to share of how a teacher went over above and beyond, whether it be coming to my class doing cafeteria duty, during your cafeteria time to get extra instruction, whether it's coming to my class doing another particular point in time. I'll go back to my early teaching days. I knew that if you had an elective, you know what I mean? If I knew my struggling kids and I knew what your schedule was, I didn't want to say that the electives weren't important, but I'd rather have you have this instruction here in ELA and reading more. So I'll be like, hey, here's a pass. Tell your teacher you go come see me. Make sure they mark you present. Come back to me. Here's yet another block of instruction that will hopefully assist you in getting it over and over again. You know what I mean? I don't mind. Teachers show up super early sometimes. Teachers stay super late sometimes. That's on top of having their own families and everything else. I'm not trying to paint them as superheroes. I'm literally speaking just what they do. So there are a number of different things that you can do. You as the parent can simply, if your kid is not willing to speak, you as the parent can simply email, text, call, whatever the case may be, leave a message with the front office and say, hey, I would like for my kid to have additional help in such and such. Here's the time frames that I have. If they can't miss the bus, let's figure something out. There are a number of different ways. It's our job as educators to figure out how best to reach them. But in that same vein, as much as it is on us, we still got to be able to work together down the line. You have to give. It's almost like setting your kid up for success. We go back to B talking about finances and everything else, and I even go back to a conversation that you started, Dub, where you were talking about helping your kid build their credit at an early age. You know what I'm saying?
That was a good idea too.
It's one of those things. Your kid didn't ask for you to build their credit. You took it upon yourself to say, let me give my kid an advantage that they won't have as they set themselves later on in life. Well, education is somewhat the same way. If my kid's not going to say anything, well, let me say something for my kid. Because what we can't have is me as an uneducated parent, and now you doubling down as an uneducated student because we're not helping each other out and we're not being productive in society. And we know that thing snowballs real quick. Real quick before
real quick,
generations down the line.
Real quick.
You know what I'm saying? And we can't afford to have generations
to mama to daughter
at the point where we're illiterate and not doing anything about it. So yeah. I just think that's part of it though.
But hey, can I just I'm gonna plug somebody real quick because I saw this post on Facebook and Will Blaylock and his wife are starting an organization to help because they understand because they're educators, a long time educator. You know, Will's a coach, but they understand that we are probably going to experience some more distance learning, and there is a gap in our community, and there's resources and things they need help with. So him and his wife started this. I guess I call it a nonprofit.
He called it a nonprofit.
Okay, cool. It's a nonprofit. It's called Pay It Forward Educational Consultant. Sure. It's a page on Facebook. Search it, like it. You know, just look for it. And if you are somebody in the community that needs help, reach out to these brothers. I mean, these are the things. We are in a social media era. He is providing this on a social media platform. So we are trying to get it out to the people. You got to be receptive, and you got to ask, and you got to go back even if you're not the most educated, everybody knows how to ask a question. I mean, so
Shout out to Will for doing that.
shout out to Will.
That is, using your gift to serve others.
Yep.
So,
Him and his wife, they starting
to
it together.
shout out to Will and his wife for doing that. That's putting the work in.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. So we talk about being able to educate yourself, research, read and research. We walk into our next point. Our next rule for a Black man to survive is to be able to seek counsel and then pass it along. What advice do you have? What scenarios do you have of moments being able to seek counsel and then passing it to our younger generations?
Dub, I'll let you take it. Let's go, Dub. What you got, Dub? Let's go, Dub.
I think you first have to find people that you respect. For young Black boys, it's often seek sometimes. Well, I ain't gonna say most Black boys. Just my experience. We kind of look at what it is we respect and what we admire first, and don't necessarily know that particular lifestyle, ideology, advice may or may not suit us or serve us. I would say this: before you can give any type of advice, you have to first seek counsel. And as opposed to seeking admiration, I think you should find someone or some people to respect and invest in first. And the difference is, I can admire you for what it is I can see on the outside and the outcome of whatever it is that you do. When I respect you, I have to vet you. I have to learn about you. I have to figure out what you're about and what your stances are. Admiration is easy, respect is hard. I've admired many people in my lifetime. I respect very few, because once I figured out what their stance truly was outside of my admiration, it's almost like how they say, don't ever meet your heroes in real life, because they'll only disappoint you. The reason being is because we just see admiration. Right. You just see the admiration. You see the outcome. You see the glorification of whatever it is they're doing, but you don't see.
You caught up on the shiny part. Yeah.
Yeah, when the lights are turned off and the spotlight is on it, if they're not on it, if they're not doing, the things that you admire, how are you outside of that? What mistakes that you made that I'm willing to make also? Or vice versa. Maybe you got there doing some stuff I'm not willing to do or don't line up. So I would say find somebody that you respect. And I think the only way you can respect anybody is to vet them, learn them, and you have to look at their rights, wrongs, or indifferences as a whole and say, all right, well, I may not agree with this, but I respect it. And then once you find that person, I think you have a responsibility if they, even if they don't. Let's just assume that you don't have anybody to look up to. You don't have any mentorship or anything like that. It could either turn you off to it or turn you on to it. Just because you didn't have it doesn't mean you can't give it to somebody else. I would just say vet and figure out that person as a whole before you give that information to somebody else, because and I'll use this analogy because me and B were talking about this. Snoop Dogg, love him, admire him, love his music. Some of the stuff he was saying, and when I was young, I'm like, oh man, that's real. I didn't know this man was married the whole time he was saying it. I had no clue. But in an immature mind, you might think that Snoop Dogg really out here pimping like this. That man got a whole wife at home and a whole family. But you don't know that because you're so wrapped up in the admiration of his gift of being, arguably top 5, top 10 lyricists, swag, videos, money, influence. And at the same token, man, he's rapping to you something that he may not necessarily be living at the time. One of my favorite rappers, Bun B. I didn't know Bun B was married this whole time. And I'm like, man, you made
They've
Big
been married
Pimpin'.
for a while.
Yeah, you made Big Pimpin'. You know what I'm saying? But in an immature mind, because you don't know any better, you actually believe this. And I'm not gonna put out. I mean, those are just examples, but you can do that in real
Mhm.
life. You can look at somebody's life and say, man, this is what I want to be, and they go home to a situation worse than what you got.
Now, I was just gonna say, entertainment is just a facade. I mean,
Absolutely.
even with reality TV, it's fake. It's not real. So the younger you figure that out, the more easier it is for you to not really rely on them as viable sources of knowledge. Even though they might, not saying that, you just can't fall in love with them because they blink. You know what I mean? That's not a 9-6 word. But looking to your elders, seeking their counsel, not only just seeking it but digesting it. Whenever you get to listen, talk to a older. I know Ron talks about talking to his grandma all the time, and he's really taking an appreciation for like some of the things that she's been telling him and like passing down to him, and like all that stuff plays a factor into like educating ourselves as well, because that's real world knowledge. Just like when I was on the CBS interview thing to do Mark Robertson, I think that's Mark Robertson. He was the part of the senior class going to Emmett Scott, and their whole year got canceled, and they wound up having to go to Lee. And all those experiences are just great. It's like food for the soul. We take it in, we digest it, and it becomes a part of us. So that helps us guide ourselves into the future. And then once we get that, we digest it, and we kind of understand it. We gotta turn around and reach back and get it and pass that knowledge on, as it applies to these young people. Because you can talk to them to you blue in the face, but if you're not trying to make a real connection with them, and Dub, you alluded to it too, you got to get, it's almost like you got to gain their trust. Just like we got to gain elders' trust, for us. So once you're able to make a connection with a kid and he trusts that the things that you are telling him are generally for his benefit, that's when the connection is made. That's when the chains get stronger, the bond grows stronger, and then we can move forward. But as long as we being stingy with the cheat codes, it's not healthy, and it's not going to change anything. We can sit here and talk about all the stuff that needs to change, but if we're not doing our part and reaching back to these young kids and showing them, hey, there's a way to handle yourself in this situation. I'm not telling you you got to be fresh dressed and a million bucks, but you need to be respectful. Like there are core values that no matter what your generation is, no matter what the style is, no matter what the culture or whatever's going on with y'all, there are core values that need to move along with each generation. We need to pass
Yeah, man. I'm reminded of the quote Shakespeare. You know what I mean? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players, right? Um,
that.
and as many people, we call them old heads, have said, you know what I mean? The game doesn't change, only the players do, right? So life is one big repeat button, played over and over and over and over again. And I was sitting here listening to Doug talking. I was sitting here asking myself this question. If you are, why is it that every male hasn't served as a mentor at some point, right? Not only to your family members, you know what I'm saying, but even to others as well. Because for a young person, whatever the age may be, it doesn't matter that you have multiple people giving you information. Actually, the more the better. Now you have to be able to break all that stuff down, and those people you have to create some comparatives with, so that people, you're not getting mixed messages. But we have a wealth of knowledge inside of us. The most educated person down to who might be considered the lowest educated person. We all have something to give.
Some people may not think they have anything to offer, though. That's why they
You
probably
always
won't do it.
do.
You may
You
not.
always do.
You
No,
may
I
not.
agree. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's what some people may think.
Yeah, and I agree that they may feel that way, but you know, man, it somebody can use it. Somebody can use it. You just never know. You know what I'm saying? What's that old adage? Even a garbage can gets a steak. You know what I'm saying? Everybody needs a little luck at some point in another, right? And so your advice may be that necessary luck needed, or that sentiment that's needed to push them over the top. I just think that whatever it is, whether it be about being a man, whether it be about sports, that seems to have a lot of mentors, whether it be about politics or whatever the case may be. I think that life has enough twists and turns in it that these kids need valuable insight. You know what I'm saying? From all ends, from all areas to get them through life. Because the one thing that's guaranteed is life is struggle. You know what I'm saying? You are going to struggle. And I don't care when it happens. I'm of the mindset that it's better to happen early. But guess what? That might not be in God's plan for you. You may be 35 and find out what real struggle is. And just know I'll be praying for you because it's going to be hard. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, man, like we all have something in us that's applicable and that is relative to something that someone is going through or someone that knows that someone else is going through. And I just think that we should all at some point serve as mentors to our youth.
Yeah.
I'll say this.
I think that. Oh yeah. I think that, you know, when I think about seeking counsel, one perspective that I look at it from is, you know, just to kind of put to add along to learning how to build relationships. I think learning how to build relationships is extremely important. In 2010, I started at the place where I work. I'm not going to, plug, whoever. I started
Come on,
at
man.
the place. No. They not paying me for that. I started at the place where I work in 2009. In 2011, I was approached by this guy. I had built a relationship with him, a working relationship. And, over time, he was in another department. Well, he told me about another job that was coming up that hadn't even posted yet. But I had the inside track because I knew him. Well, I was able to be the first one to interview for that job, and my salary increased by $20K, right? But I wouldn't have known that.
You can't plug them.
You better go steal it from the daycare. I'll tell you that. But I wouldn't have known about that job. I wouldn't have been the first one to be able to interview that job if I hadn't been able to build a relationship with that guy. Whatever it is that people want to do, there are other people that are willing to share information about that, and you seek counsel from those individuals. If you want to be a realtor, there are other realtors out there who are willing to share information with you. Real estate is something that I'm really interested in learning about. So I know somebody who has done real estate in Tyler. He's an older guy. He's been doing it for the last 30, 40 years, and he's really successful at it. Well, I called him up one day, and we sat and talked for about 45 minutes, and he gave me a lot of information. I built that relationship up with him. So when I started to look at things, I could go to somebody who is doing it already and seek counsel from that person. So I think that building relationships in whatever it is that you want to do, being a resource to somebody else, I think that's a good way to exchange information. We need to do it more with each other. But I just look at seeking counsel from the perspective of being able to build relationships. And once you know a lot of different people in a lot of different areas, you have a lot more resources that you can. That's how things get done.
Right.
Just because you see somebody in a particular position, that doesn't mean that person is particularly well versed there. Yeah. They may know the right people and was there at the right time. That's how the world works. So I think that being able to, build yourself up have different relationships with a lot of different people, you'll be able to seek counsel. And once you have that information, you see somebody else that's behind you, share that information with them, just like somebody shared it with you.
Yeah. Sharing knowledge costs you nothing. It's free.
You know,
And it doesn't take away from your bank account. I think I know for myself, yeah, hell, for the most part, anybody older than me, man, I think we have to stop being as judgmental. I'm guilty of it from generations before us because they don't look, dress, and operate the same way that we do. And even for the younger generation, you have to stop being so judgmental, because while you're judging somebody at 19, 20, you could be them in 10 to 15 years and not even know it. And you're discrediting advice that you hadn't gotten yet, because you're looking at this person like, ah, man, you a bum. You ain't, look at you. You only make $35,000 a year. I'm trying to ball. Well, who's to say that you're not going to be in the same position? And maybe that man can give you some information, even though you might land there, he may be able to give you some information to help you operate through it better than what he did.
Bro, I'm telling you, you would be surprised. I was very surprised at how much information that I got and things that I've done. Not that I've just done a ton, but you would be surprised at how many people who are successful at whatever it is that they're doing, who are willing to talk with you, even if it's for a few minutes, and give you some nuggets on how to be successful and how to be better at it. If I was a teacher, if I wanted to be a teacher, or if my son or my daughter wanted to be a teacher, it's nothing to go up to a teacher and say, hey, how do you do this? Or somebody who is successful at real estate. You depending on how you approach them, right? Depending upon how you approach people, you would be very surprised if you just had courage enough to go up there and ask them how much information people are willing to give you. They're willing to give it to you.
Hey, spot on, spot on, spot on. All right, gentlemen, we get into our last one. Just a quick recap: we had educate yourself, read and research. Then we had seek counsel and pass it along. And adding B's point, being able to build those relationships. Our last one is to be active in your community. Why is it important for a Black man to be active in their community?
one, we've been ripped out of them for so long.
Sure.
It's time that we get back in them. The 80s hit, and we all went to jail, and we all died, dang near, because of an infectious drug running rampant in our communities. But it's important because, it just ties into seeking knowledge and giving back. It's the natural next step is to get involved. And the only way to give back, and reach back is to get up and go do it. Like, be involved, find an organization, be a big brother, be a big sister, volunteer with some organization that's dealing with whatever cause that's helping your community. Whatever you can do, but that calls for you to do some educating yourself and researching and reading. All of that is just a natural tie into now put all that into action. What are you going to do? How are you going to provide services? And you don't have to be the big kahuna in charge. Like, I do a lot for a lot of people, but I do not want any recognition. I want to move in silence. My pleasure is seeing people succeed, period. I don't need to be in the limelight. All I need to know is, did what I did help this young man, young sister, whoever, get to what they need or understand what they needed to know. That's where I get my love for it. So, but you have to gain a certain passion for your community as well. You can't go around and talk down on the older generation, can't talk down on the younger generation, and vice versa. We need to squash all of that and we just need to work together to make our community strong. We got so many creative Black people in the community, man, that's out there hustling. And this social distancing and COVID stuff, you look in the meeting and you see white people don't want to wear a mask. It's like Black people have been bred out of necessity of survival. We've been bred to survive. Like, you know how many people online hustling their ideas and their products and making ends meet? That's nothing new for us. We was doing that before social distance. So squashing all that and coming together as a community to support ourselves, we can't help nobody else if we can't help ourselves. So get active, get involved some type of way.
I think I have a more archaic view of community involvement. When and Risha touched
Archaic?
about
Yeah.
archaic.
What is this? please
Yeah.
Something I kind of it's not anything that I didn't know, but that kind of emphasized when I was doing my LTC class was situational awareness. Being involved in your community outside of helping, being involved in mentoring, but being aware of the situation in your community, being able to identify things where your resources are going to be maximized and places where it may not be, where you could potentially put yourself in a situation where you may have the best intentions going down the street to go holler at people at Texas College Apartments back in the 90s, but you go out there with $1,000 in your pocket, you're going to get robbed.
Weak.
With the best intention, right? So outside of just the community service, being aware of the situation that you are in your community will help you better identify where can I help and where do I put my resources to maximize helping the community as a whole. I think when we talk about community services, it's very broad and general. My grandmother was very, influential in the neighborhood. There were some people that she could reach. There were some people that just didn't care to hear it. Now she could have went down to certain places and tried to force herself. As matter of fact, I don't know if y'all noticed. What's those guys that ride around? Not Jehovah's Witnesses, but they want to teach you. Have you accepted Christ in your life? And I'm like, man, you were doing this in the most dangerous neighborhood
Mormons?
ever. Nah, I don't even know if they're
You talking about
Mormons.
those dudes that ride around on the bikes?
You
With
thought
the white, yeah.
Yeah. You running around Liberty Arms in the neighborhood where you can be found missing.
But for real, hey, that reminds me of a quick story. No, when I stayed in Villages Apartments right there off 31, I think it's called Oxford Point now.
Mm-hmm.
Those dudes used to roll through the apartment, and every time they would get me and my boys. We would actually try to avoid them guys. But when they caught us, we felt so bad. We were like, okay, we're going to accept Jesus in our life for the 13th time.
Right. Bro, I'm
but go ahead.
I'm going to take the little green Bible and go on about your business, man.
They will roll up in a whole bus, dude, and get out there they trying to take us away to a church.
Longview Baptist? Was it Longview Baptist who was taking kids?
I think that's what it was. Yes, dog. No, it was kind of cult-like, but I don't know. I never got on the bus. Never got on the bus.
It was forbidden. You get in that bus, because they're not bringing you back.
My friends, they would come back. I had a few friends to go, but I'm not going. No, thank you.
OG?
Hey, man. I think that as Reese said, man, you gotta do something, right? You gotta step up in some form of fashion, and it doesn't have to be in ways that people always think. To be active in the community always seems so political to a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be that way. One way that this whole thing is, we go back to those other 2 points, educating yourself and even then seeking counsel and passing it along. Being a youth coach, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of mentee mentorship type relationship that exists between a young player and their coach. And I can go back to my earliest days of playing, where there'd been Mr. Whitaker, Scott Whitaker's dad, shout out to them, or even Reverend Caraway. it's just about being able to give back to those young boys in the community. It can be very much so that simple. It can be going down and helping out with the canned food drive or assisting the needy, whatever the case may be, but do something. I definitely agree with Risa that we have to be about action. Um, it does us no good, speaking of us four young brothers here on this call, to sit up here and talk about all these things and in not some form of fashion be able to say, hey, this is what we're doing in our own communities. We're only going to help us out, right? One of the
See
things
all
that
we
pains
got.
me, one of the things that pains me the most is that I work in Fort Worth, right? But I don't live in Fort Worth. And so those kids don't see me outside of what a traditional school day looks like. For the kids here in the community in which I live, they don't get to see me serving the capacity I enjoy doing the most. So you have to kind of figure out, at least for me, I have to figure out how to serve one community in one capacity, but then come back to my home community and say, now how can I assist you and how can I show you that I'm down for this community? Because we plan on purchasing a new home, but it won't be too far from where we are currently. So we love the community we're in. We want to help build the community and build the young men, the young women, the young girls, whatever the case may be. We want to build all of them up so the community can stay strong and that you don't see the natural attrition that takes place where you have a good growing set of kids. Next thing you know, they're all gone and then nobody's there other than the elderly to wither away. So I think it's super important just to be a part of it, to invest in your community, to spend necessary time. 1 hour a Saturday is not going to kill anybody. We prioritize things in life because we deem them to be successful. We set our DVRs and all those kind of things to catch TV shows and blah, blah, blah. Spending that 30 minutes to that 1 hour giving back is only going to benefit everybody around.
Right. I think community involvement is essential, and and as OG was saying earlier, there's a million different ways that you can do it. I think what we're doing here right now, given the benefit of our experiences and wanting to reach out to other men and just other people in general, that's reaching out and helping your community. People like Will Blaylock and his wife coming up
Yep.
with the nonprofit, seeing a problem and trying to address a need. Right? Starting a nonprofit, especially in the educational sense, that is out in your community. People like Bobby Hill, who had him and his lifted basketball program. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things. They don't get the recognition that they deserve, but it's you taking whatever it is that you're good. It can be you taking whatever it is that you're good at and using it to help other people. Like I say, again, shout out to Will, shout out to Bobby, and shout out to everybody else who is, using, their platform. All of us have platforms. Like you say, with social media right now, everybody has a platform, and you can either use it for to help somebody else, or you can use it for something else. You know what I'm saying? So there's a million different ways that you can do it. Me, myself, I want to get better at it. I'm like I said, I do the podcast, but there's a lot of different ways that I can serve. So, like I said, there's a million different ways that you can do it. So it's about just, getting out there and getting it done.
Right. So let me go ahead and plug us. The Making of Men, TM Squared, coming soon. It's going to happen.
It's in the works.
We've spoken it into existence. It's in the early stages. I don't know what avenue or what aspect is going to hit us or hit the community, but it's going to happen. Like this whole us doing this podcast is just fate, destiny getting us together so we can give back. Because we've accumulated quite a bit of knowledge since we've left high school. I mean, we've all been on crazy journeys. Okay?
Right or wrong.
Had some things, yeah. We done been through it in some way, aspect, or another. Yeah. But we're going to bring that to the community.
Hey man, I'm a firm believer that TM Square will jump off the ground one day. It's only a matter of time. It will be coming to a neighborhood near you. Let's say that it should have a vast reach, and we hope to pick up our young boys and turn them into men, because that's what our world needs today. especially for young men of color. So we just gave you our next three rules that we consider to be essential to being a black man to survive in America. I'm going to rehash the top 7 that we've given you so far. Number 1 was to be an individual. Number 2 was to be honest with yourself and others. Number 3 was to seek mental health. Number 4 was to defend yourself. 5 is to educate yourself, to read and research. 6 being to seek counsel and pass it along, and also being able to build those relationships. And then 7 is being active in your community. Those 7 things we feel are super, super essential elements or skills that black men need to be able to garner to be impactful in this world. So next we got the big food for thought. We're going to pass it out to Mr. Reese. What you got for us?
Okay, so food for thought. First off, shout out to TISD and the school board for unanimously voting to move forward with changing the names of JT and Robert E. Lee. It's been past due. It's something that has been an issue amongst a portion of Tyler's community for years and years. But like I said, this generation, and it was beautiful to see our classmates' children get up there and talk. Okay. A lot of them got up there and spoke. The youth spoke. Like I said, this generation of student, of kid, they're more united than any other generation. Okay. I saw black kids coming up and talk. I saw white kids getting up and speak. I saw white adults our age, black adults our age, speaking up for the change. Now, to say this, it's not just going to be symbolic, but it is just a seed to be planted for us to move forward. Without those symbols, we won't ever forget because it's our history. It's in the books, and that's what we're coming for next. We finna get these history books accurate so that we can accurately teach what happened in our culture, how it relates to white America and black America, and then we're gonna come together and we're gonna show the world historically how we overcame it. But it starts with the seed. And tonight the seed was changing the name to JT. So big ups to Tyler, big ups to the school board. 7-0. I was shocked, but I'm happy it happened. So we're not stopping here. The crowd that was in front of Plyler, chanting and rooting it on, there's still more work to do. But be strategic, be respectful, and take care of yourselves. Take care of your community.
And I want to send a special shout out to the young lady who really kind of sparked the whole situation. Her name, I just looked it up. Her name is Trudy Lamb. I hope I'm saying that correctly. She was a runner at Robert E. Lee, and she refused to wear her jersey unless the name was changed. It takes courage like that because that young lady took a lot of abuse. She took a lot of abuse online in the comments. And she really stepped out there. And she sparked that change and she took a stand. So shout out to her. Congratulations. You know what I'm saying? It's because of young ladies like that was willing to take a stand when she didn't really have to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You didn't.
To willing to take a stand, to stand out, and to put yourself out there to be ostracized. Shout out to her for doing that and bringing that to the light.
Yep. This generation is dope for real.
Hey, as always, we want all kinds of feedback. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Check us out on SoundCloud. We're also on other different types of medias. Reese, what we got? Where else are we on the podcast?
We on Spotify. We on Google Cast. We're on Apple Podcasts. Pretty much all streaming
sites.
Streaming sites. We're on it. So check us out. We're here. Let's go.
Hey, right on, man. Hey, look, we have a great time doing this, but it doesn't make it a difference if the conversation does not continue. Hit us up at carwashconvos@gmail.com if you have any statements, or on any of those social media sites. If you have a statement, question, concern, whatever the case may be, we want to have all of the conversations focused so that we can have bigger conversations. And just like tonight's unanimous vote with the changing of the names, the changing of our culture continues as we push to have more and more conversations. For myself, Ron, for Dub, for Reese, for BG, we'll see you next time.